Good afternoon, Mustang families. I'm going to give everybody a second to get into the Zoom room. So we will start in about 30 seconds. Just allow everybody to get their screen up and we'll get ready to roll. Ms. Dimitri, if you don't mind giving me kind of a thumbs up when you think everybody's in, that way I know I can get started.
Yes, sir. All right, go ahead.
Welcome, Mustang families, and to our Monticello Community Informational Meeting. We are very appreciative that you are joining us this evening. We ask that everyone please make sure that your mute is on during the presentation. If you want to turn your video off, by all means, you may turn your video off. We do have a Spanish interpreter. His name is Luis Grande, and if you look in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, if you would like to hear it in Spanish, you may click that button now and you will hear it in Spanish. I'll give you 1 second just to make that choice if you would like to. During the presentation this evening, we ask that if you have a question, please do so in the chat function. Address it to Ms. Patricia Dimitri, one of our assistant principals. If she can answer the question, she will. If she cannot directly answer it, we will pause at different times during the presentation to answer questions for you. I hope that everybody can see my screen with no issues. And this presentation is being recorded and will be uploaded to our webpage if you need to view it again at any point. So for further information, the Albemarle County School Board met last Thursday on July 30th, and they decided to start school in phase 2 on September 8th. I will explain to you what phase 2 means, and there are 5 phases for Albemarle County Public Schools, and I will explain that in 1 second. Secondly, I also wanted you to know last week that the Virginia High School League voted on option number 3 for the Virginia High School League Athletic Association for athletes to start participating in December for athletics. And so what does that mean? It means that the winter season for sports would be activities would be from December until February. The fall season for sports and activities would be from March until early May. And the spring season would be from April until June. That information has been updated by the Virginia High School League, and all that information is also on our homepage, but our athletic director, Mr. Pierman, continually updates the athletic webpage. So a second ago, I mentioned to you that the school division had made 5 phases for the opening of school. And those 5 phases are as follows. Phase 1 is virtual learning for all students, which is where we were in the spring. Phase 2, which is the phase that the school board opted for, which is virtual learning for most students with in-person learning for a limited number of students. And I will explain in a second what that means. Phase 3, which is still virtual learning for most students, but there is some in-person learning for a moderate number of students, mainly elementary school students. Stage 4 is virtual learning by choice and hybrid learning by most students. And then stage 5 would be back to the original school year. There's still the option for virtual learning if a student or a family chooses that, but it is in-person learning for all students. The school board decided that we would start school in phase 2. When we start phase 2, that means in order to move from phase 2 to another phase, the school board would have to make a decision. That decision is based on the recommendation of our superintendent, Dr. Matthew Haas. And the superintendent, excuse me, would make that decision at the midway point of a grading period. And so he will make a recommendation to the school board halfway through a grading period for what the next grading period means. So we start school September 8th. The first grading period ends approximately November 6th. Dr. Haas would make a recommendation to the school board close to the 1st of October as to where we needed to be for the second 9 weeks of school. From my understanding, there would not be any skipping of phases, that you would go from phase 2 to phase 3 or phase 3 to phase 4. You could at any time go backwards though, depending on what the Thomas Jefferson Health District recommends. Factors that determine where we are is number one, what the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, what he decides for the 3 phases that the Commonwealth has decided they're going to be, local directions from the Thomas Jefferson Health District, or information received from the CDC. Explain that phase 1 is virtual learning for all students. It's where we ended the school year last year. That was from the beginning of March until the end of June, and every student had virtual learning during that phase. I said that the superintendent made a recommendation to the school board that we would be opening school in phase 2, and that says that we would have virtual learning for most students and in person for a limited number of students. As you could see in the middle of my screen, there were 3 groups of students that the superintendent was talking about. Number 1, students that do not have internet access. Number 2, students with special needs who cannot access the curriculum as identified by their IEP. And number 3, English language learners who were WIDA 1 or WIDA 2 students. When those students come into our building, they will be grouped in smaller groups of 10 or less, and they will be supervised by a volunteer teacher or staff member. So there could be what are called learning coaches that will be with those students during the school day. There was a survey that was sent out by the school division last week that asked you to fill out the survey about what your learning choices were, transportation, and your internet accessibility. To date today, as of today, we were just a little bit over 50% of our families responded. If you have not responded, please check your email and respond to that. We are sending out a Connect Ed this afternoon to the families that did not respond, and we ask you, if you are listening to this message, to please make sure that you respond to that survey. It's very important that we know who has access to internet and who does not have access. So we appreciate your cooperation with that. So that was basically what I was talking about, was the internet access. And there are 3 steps that our school division is looking at with students concerning, I say students, but it's really families and their ability to connect to the internet. Number 1, some families have no internet at all at home, but where they live has the ability to have a hotspot. And it is determined by your address whether or not you have the ability to have a hotspot location. If that is the case, we could get you a hotspot and you would have it at home. Some students cannot get internet and cannot get a hotspot access. They have no ability to access the internet from home. Those are the students that we would look at coming into the school building during the day so they could access the internet from Monticello High School. Number 3, we have families that financially cannot afford internet. They live in an area where internet is available, but they cannot afford it. We know that Comcast is working with our school division to provide assistance. And if you have that, please contact us and we will make sure that we share that information with our Office of Technology to find out if you are eligible for financial assistance to receive internet. Mr. Dimitri, I'm going to pause for just 1 second to see if there's any questions that I might be able to answer for you at this time from our community.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You are good to go.
All right. So folks, please, if you have a question, Mr. Dimitri is just waiting to type away your responses, the responses to your questions. So please don't hesitate at any time to ask. You know, I was a little nervous when we started because I haven't seen our community in so long. Graduation, I got to see everybody, but not in a large group. It was all individual. And I just can't tell you how much we miss our folks being in our building and being around us. One of the last major events that we held at Monticello High School with a large group of people was our Monticello Showcase, which is a showcase of all of Monticello High School. And it was such a wonderful evening, and there were so many families that were here engaged in what we were doing. And I believe that was March 5th was the day that we had that, and March 13th was the last day that we were in school. And so it's been a long time since our hallways have heard laughter and seen people walking up and down, holding hands and smiling and playing jokes with each other and just the laughter. And we truly miss that. We miss our students, we miss our families, and we know that this is crazy times, that this pandemic is a dangerous thing, and we just cannot wait until the time comes when we are all back together as a big Monticello family. We really do love our families. Our teachers embrace and want to be with your children, and we can't wait for that time to come. So I was nervous at the beginning. I wanted to get started, and I didn't even really welcome you. I was so worried about making sure that the translation worked, and I shared the Zoom with Ms. Dimitri that I forgot that you all, our community, was there. And so I really want to apologize to you for being neglectful of you at the beginning of the presentation. So please accept my apologies for that. All right, so moving right along. So if we're starting the school year September 8th in phase 2, Dr. Haas, somewhere on or about the 1st of October, would make a recommendation to the school board as to what the next phase would be if we are moving forward. And the decision at that time is to move to phase 3. Phase 3 means that they're all PK through 3rd grade elementary school students would be back in school full-time in person, and that we would still continue to serve our English language learners, our special ed students. We would continue to serve students that were experiencing homelessness and those that did not have internet access and that were really struggling with virtual learning. Phase 4 is virtual learning by choice. And in that survey that was sent home, there was a choice for you as a family if you wanted to learn virtually. That is purely a choice. If you wanted to spend the whole year off virtually because you might have health concerns, you might fear that your family is at risk if someone in your family becomes exposed to COVID, or if you feel like it's just a better situation for your child to learn virtually. Those are choices that you would make, and you would learn synchronously with our classes as they were going on. It also means that a lot of our students would be back into hybrid learning, which I will explain in just a second in a little bit more detail. So I had to update this slide a little bit today because we were given some new guidance this morning in a meeting, and I'm glad that we had the meeting with our supervisors and they updated us. So Number one, this PowerPoint is on our website. You will be able to go to the website and find this PowerPoint when the presentation is over. These are links right here that you can click on that will take you to another setting. This is the Center for Disease Control, and it provides a lot of up-to-date information with what the Center for Disease Control is recommending for schools to open. They are recommendations and guidelines. They are not orders, okay? They are just guidelines that schools are to follow. But there is a lot of information there that has good information in there for you to look at. It is interesting to know that the CDC did not recommend that schools do screenings on every student. They recommend that a family member does screenings, like checks to make sure that you're not feeling sick and that you haven't had any of the symptoms of COVID. But it is also very important to know that the school system, when students enter the building at this time, will be taking temperatures of every person that enters the building every single day, starting on Friday. That is going to be our protocol for the remainder of the school year. Every employee and every student that enters the building will have their temperature checked, and they will have to sign off that they have not had any of the symptoms of COVID. We asked, the other thing that was updated today as well is that face mask. I'll demonstrate. Everybody can see me. That face masks are to be worn by everybody at all times. The initial guidelines for face masks were just face masks were to be worn, and once inside the building, if social distancing could be adhered to, you could take off your face mask. Under new guidelines, face masks are going to be worn the entire time students and staff are in the building. Next, there is a website that Albemarle County has put out for parents, staff, and students to look at. It's called the Return to School Planning Guide. This website has a ton of information on it concerning all the information that Albemarle County Public Schools has put together about returning to school. Please take a look at this because it provides information for you as a parent, for you if you are an employee, or if you have a person in your family that is an employee. So there is key information in there. It talks about how we are going to sanitize and clean our building, how we are going to work with staff members, how we're going to work with students. So please take a look at this website. Again, it is a link in the PowerPoint. Next, there is I wanted to make sure that you know that there is a draft calendar that has been put out, and I just wanted to highlight that in green up here at the top is September 8th, which is the very first day that school starts. This is a link for you. You can see this, but as you look at this calendar, please note that in a traditional calendar, there are many half days and teacher work days after the end of grading periods, and there's professional days that are built into the calendar. This year, all those days have been moved to the front of the calendar here in purple, deep blue, prior to the start of school. Once we get into school, there are very few days built in where students are off of school, okay? Because of virtual learning, they did not provide days for students not to be in instruction. So that link is here for you to look at any time you would like to, okay? Ms. Dimitri, am I okay? Any questions? All right, so a really, really big change for Monticello High School was, in all of Albemarle County secondary schools, was moving from a traditional AB 8 periods to the 4x4, okay? So traditionally, over the past several years in Albemarle County, if you were a high school student, you had 8 classes in your schedule. and you had at Monticello, you had a black day and a gold day. And on a black day, you took 4 classes, and on gold day, you took your other 4 classes. And we had a schedule that Mondays and Wednesdays were black days, and Tuesdays and Thursdays were gold days. And Friday, even though it's changed over the last couple of years, Friday, we used to have all of them in one day, or we alternated between a black and a gold. That has changed for this coming school year. Every student still has 8 periods in their schedule. They still have 8 classes that they are going to take this school year. But we're doing a 4x4. And what that means is students will take 4 classes for 1 semester every single day. All right. So the example that I have up on the board is I have Algebra 2, I have English, I have marching band, and I have AP Chemistry. That's 4 of the 8 classes that I signed up for. The very first semester of the school year, which is September 8th through the end of January, I will take those 4 classes and only those 4 classes every single day. If I have an SOL test or something that's related to it, I will take it at that time. If I have an AP class, up there it says I'm taking AP Chemistry. My AP test will not be in January. My AP test is in May at the end of the school year. That is universal for the entire country, okay? So that is something that we do not control. Second semester, I take my next 4 classes, which is US History, Jazz Band, Photography, and I have an internship. And so I would take those classes every single day from the 1st of February until the end of the school year in June. If the US History class is linked to a verified credit in an SOL, that means that I would take my SOL test in June, and I would be done with my verified credit testing. Ms. Dimitri, any questions on the 4x4?
Sir, good to continue.
All right. Thank you, folks. So I know that I mentioned this, but students that are taking classes for verified credits, there are 11 possible verified credits that a student could take, and those are classes that offer SOLs. You do not have to take an SOL in every single class that you take, but if you are taking a class that requires an SOL and you are required to take that SOL, you will take it in the semester that you're taking the course. If you're taking an AP course, it will not have its test until May. With AP testing, so you do know, if I am taking a fall AP class, we will have extended learning and review sessions for students in the end of April from spring break on with students to get them where they need to be back for the test, just to get their memory jogged again and get them moving in the right direction for the test. So they wouldn't have to go from the end of January until May with without any sort of review of the information that they learned. So I know that as a community and as a school system as a whole, there are 14,000 students in Albemarle County schools. And I know that across the United States of America, many parents had a tremendous amount of concerns when schools shut down in March. And we immediately went to online learning, and there was some concerns about what was really being accomplished in that virtual learning. We know that we went to pass-fail, that we worked on students just to make sure that they got work turned in, that there was common work that was given for every class, and the work was a review of information that they had learned earlier, okay? That means that for the end of the year, we had the bar down here because we weren't sure what we were doing at that point, okay? We were placed in a pandemic, and we were forced to make a decision immediately as to what to do for the future. Since that time, we realized the bar was down here, and we were just trying to tread water. We realized that we need the bar up here. we all realize that the bar needs to be up here for our students, okay? And so what virtual learning will look like in the fall as opposed to the spring, it is going to be vastly different. They are currently working on a specific schedule for students that all secondary students from 6th grade through 12th grade would be working on a very similar schedule. We realize that we cannot sit somebody down in front of a computer screen for 90 minutes, give them a 5-minute break and expect them to sit back down for 90 minutes and do that 4 times a day. We realize that's not feasible. We do realize that screen time needs to be limited. We do realize that there needs to be direct instruction, but we also realize we need to be working with students individually in breakout rooms or small groups so that we can continue learning. So there's going to be some synchronous learning and some asynchronous learning that will take place during that time. Let me stay right there. So I'm going to take you to this page. So here is in the Albemarle County website, there is a page on virtual learning, and it discusses virtual learning then and virtual learning now. If I click on this button right here, it just gives some examples of what the spring looked like and what the fall is going to look like. All right, I'm not going to insult your intelligence and read every one of the bullet points for you, but there are many bullet points up there that are extremely important for you to look at. Our teachers have been training over the summer and are continuing to get professional development that will enable them to be more successful in the classroom teaching virtually this fall than where they were in the spring. So that would get us up through phase 3. Phase 4 puts us in the hybrid learning. I'm not going to spend an enormous amount of time on the hybrid learning because currently the hybrid learning, at the earliest, from my understanding, it would have to go through 2 9 weeks before we got there. But when we look at the hybrid learning means that we would have approximately 50% of our students in the building every other day. Those students would go through their 4 classes. They would be in instruction from approximately, I'm going to use a time frame of 9:30 till 4:30. That is not a set time, but it is a time that transportation saw that they could make several runs on elementary schools to get high school students there. We're saying those time frames because currently we have to have social distancing on buses, which means that we cannot put 48 or 50 kids on a bus at any given time. Some of our buses can only hold 15 to 18 students, while other buses might hold 25 or 26 students. So in order to get all of our student population who rides or needs transportation to school by a school bus, we would have to make sure that we start at school at different times. The hybrid learning, though, would include 2 days of in-person learning and 2 days of synchronous virtual learning every week. The 4th or the 5th day would be a day of asynchronous learning for all students. Okay, so they would have 2 days of virtual or 2 days of in-person learning, 2 days of synchronous learning, and 1 day of asynchronous learning. And so terminology, synchronous means that a student is learning simultaneously as a student is in person. So if I am working with a group of 10 students in my classroom, I have 10 students that are online with me at the same time. Asynchronously means that the students are working independently from their teacher at that time. Okay? About 2 weeks ago, we sent out a survey from Monticello High School that was asking questions concerning your thoughts about returning to school and what you were concerned about. We received almost immediately within the first 24 hours, 200 responses, which we are greatly appreciative that you were sending responses to us. We took those responses, we answered them as an administrative team, and we posted those responses currently on our homepage. We also have taken those responses and we have placed them in our slideshow. We did not place all of them, but we grouped them according to what the question was around. So number one is about the semester schedule, or the 4x4, which I discussed. Students will be in the 4x4 in the fall, regardless whether we're virtual or not. Students will be on the 4x4 schedule the entire school year, from September 8th until the last day of school, which I believe is like June 13th. It will be a 4x4 schedule all year. With only a 4-course load per semester, will students still have virtual PE and virtual health? Yes. PE and health 1 and PE and health 2 are graduation requirements by the Virginia Department of Education, and we will still offer both of those during the during COVID and on the 4x4 schedule. Would consideration be given to not loading student schedules? What we ask our counselors to do once schedules are finally completed, that they go through and make sure that student schedules are balanced. That, for instance, a student doesn't have Algebra 2, Chemistry, US History, and English 11 all in the same semester. We want to try and balance it where they had 2 core classes and 2 exploratory classes. But we do know that many of our students have chosen a world language or are taking 2 math classes during the year. So we would try to make sure that we split the math classes and the world language classes as best as possible. I don't think it's reasonable, I don't think it's reasonable for a higher level math class to be condensed into 1 semester. If a student takes pre-calc in the fall, they would have 9 months until they took another class in math. So that is 100% correct. So if a student does take, for instance, geometry, they're taking geometry this year and they have geometry in the first semester, they would have geometry from September until the end of January. They would not pick up math again until August of 2021. So that is definitely one of the pitfalls of a 4x4 schedule. But I will say that the majority, I won't say the majority, there are many school districts around us that are on the 4x4 and have been on the 4x4 and have seen great results using the 4x4 for classes like world language and math. They've seen great results with it. Questions concerning freshman orientation. Will there still be a freshman orientation? Yes, there will be. Freshman orientation, our Fresh Start program will be done virtually, and we are working on a virtual tour of our school, and we will have that information coming out to you shortly. We are also having our teachers that teach Fresh Start, and all of our teachers will be doing video snaps of themselves that we will be using in a flip grid on our homepage for parents to look at. Special education questions. So there were many questions that parents asked concerning special education. So students that have special education or 504 have what's called an IEP. It's an individualized educational plan. And so we feel that those questions are individual questions that need to be taken up directly with our department chairman, Mr. John Kenny, or with our administrator that's in charge working with special education, Ms. Patricia Dimitri. So we ask that you please, if you have a special ed question, email those folks. If you have a question concerning your son or daughter's 504 plan, Ms. Lita Johnson is our special education teacher who is in charge of 504. So please make sure that you email them any questions that you have about your son or daughter's IEP plan. HMSA. So for those that are wondering, what is HMSA? HMSA is our Health Medical Science Academy. It's an incredible program for students grades 9 through 12 that we have a large number of students that come from the Western District and a large number of students from the Albemarle District and from the Monticello District that make up our HMSA program. And there's a lot of labs, a lot of internships, a lot of programs in there that students go out and visit other sites. We are planning right now on doing as much of that as we possibly can. Right now, having internships in hospitals or medical situations is not a great idea, and they're not allowing a lot of them. But Mr. Jeremy Dove is our department chair for the HMSA program, and Dr. Lauren Williamson, Dr. Lauren Williamson is our science department chairman. Both of them work with the HMSA program, and Dr. Williamson actually does the placements for the internships. And so she and Jeremy are two people that would be great people to reach out to if you had questions concerning it. But I can tell you that we are going to work with all of our science classes and all of our classes that need to do labs and have expendable equipment, and make sure that all of our students are provided those materials when we do labs. For instance, if you're in biology and we're going to do a lab on a plant, we would make sure that there were bags that were sealed that had the materials that were in it for students to do the lab. If the student or the family could not pick that material up at school, we would put it in the mail and mail it home, so every student would be able to have that opportunity to do the lab. We do realize that instruction is going to look differently, but what we don't want to do is cheat students or not allow students to have some of the opportunities that they would have in person. Again, here's where we were in the spring. Here's where we're going to be in the fall. Okay? K-Tech questions. So K-Tech, we have, of the schools that feed into K-Tech, we have the greatest number of students that can attend K-Tech. The Charlottesville area technical community school is we have about 125 to 130 students that attend there. And they are going to have classes. It is going to be virtual, just like we are. The classes will only be in the morning this year. And Miss Stephanie Carter is the principal there. They are working to allow students to still have their work internships. So I know that a lot of our students that go to K-Tech, they end up working with refrigeration or working in electricity or working in building. They are actually at job sites right now completing work in the summer, and they will continue to have those opportunities. There is a question up there about the emergency medical training, and they are still working to ensure that the EMT course will be able to be continued, and students will have all the opportunities that are afforded in the EMT program. So transportation questions right now, we know that transportation is on hold for the vast majority of us. But we do know that when we go back to school, which we will this year at some point, students or families that have multiple students in school will be able to be on the same bus. So if I have a brother and I go to Monticello High School, obviously if we separate it by alphabet, Verhoevac, which is a V, we both would be able to get on the bus. If my brother had a different last name and his last name was Driver, then he would also be able to go to school the same day that I went. We would allow, even if the last name was not the same, we would allow all family members to attend school on the same day. So AP dual enrollment courses, we are still offering both, and they will both be on the 4x4. Dual enrollment courses, they will still, for instance, if I'm in dual enrollment English, I will still get English 111 and English 112, which are the two college courses that they get credit for. They would have 111 in the fall and 112 in the spring. AP courses we tried really hard when we were creating the master schedule to divide our AP courses in half. So if we had 8 sections of AP English Lit, we tried to put 4 in the first semester and 4 in the second semester. If we had 3, we tried to put 2 in one semester and 1 in another semester. So we tried to balance our classes the best that we could. One other thing for students taking dual enrollment courses, seniors, if you're a parent of a senior right now, we are going to share information on August 12th concerning the possibility that a senior could graduate at the end of the first semester. So by going to the 4x4, there are certain seniors that might only need 4 credits to graduate. And there is a possibility that we could arrange their schedule to take all 4 classes in the fall semester, and they would graduate in January, and they could go on into the next step in their life, which might be the job force, it might be the military, or it could be going to college, okay? But there'll be information that comes from the school on August 12th, and then we are going to have a countywide Zoom meeting with the other high schools. It would be currently Murray High School, Western Albemarle High School, and Albemarle High School. We would all be together on a Zoom meeting, and our directors of counseling would be with us, and they would be able to share that information as well. Ms. Dimitri, am I okay right now?
We have a couple good questions.
All right, so I'm going to stop right there for a second and answer some of the questions. What you got for me, Ms. Dimitri?
One. Will driver's ed be scheduled based on birthdays?
So that is a great question, and that is an answer I do not know. Here's what I do know. The course itself is being offered in the fall. So driver's education is in the Health 2 curriculum. In that course, all of our Health 2 classes are in the fall semester. So every student who signed up to take Health 2, driver's education, they will get that between September 8th and the end of January. It is a fall semester course. The behind the wheel is something that we as a school do not deal with. That would be getting a hold of Miss Karen Water-Wicks at Albemarle High School and discussing that with her. But we are currently doing behind the wheel right now. We have students that come in that do one-on-one with a driver's education teacher currently. So I don't know if they're doing it by birth, but I know that if you call Miss Karen Water-Wicks at Albemarle High School, she will be able to give you that answer. But all students will take driver's ed in the fall.
Great, thank you. How are we handling PSAT testing this year?
So that's another great question. So currently on, I believe it's August 29th, there's an SAT test that is currently scheduled at Albemarle High School. From my understanding, that test is going to be canceled, okay? So I know that's not the question that you asked. You asked the question about PSATs. But from my understanding, they are canceling that test right now. With that being said, I'm not sure where we are with the College Board in the PSATs. The PSATs, by the College Board's choice, is a paper pencil test. It has not gotten into a computer generated test yet, and that is the College Board's decision to do that. Okay, that test could easily be generated and made into a computer generated test, but it's not, it's paper pencil. And so they make an enormous amount of money each year, the College Board does, and I think the College Board is going to have to adapt and make some decisions on how they're going to work with schools in getting the PSAT and the SAT when students are not in the building. I know that's a long-winded answer to your question. At this time, though, we have currently not canceled PSATs yet. I do use that yet.
All right, last question for now. Will midterm and final exams be given during each of the semesters on a 4x4 schedule?
That's another great question. So the midterm on a 4x4 schedule would put us in that first week in November because the midterm is 9 weeks in because the course is only 18 weeks. We have a meeting on Monday at 9 o'clock to discuss the midterms. Everyone knows that currently there's supposed to be a midterm exam and a final exam. They're each supposed to count 20% of a semester grade. We have not reached a final decision on that. That decision will be made on Monday, and I will make sure that that information is shared out to our community when that decision is reached. And so whoever asked that great question, that is a division-wide answer. That's not a Monticello answer. So I can't make that decision for Monticello High School and say, well, we don't believe there should be midterms. That's a division-wide. So all of the high schools, all secondary schools would be following the exact same procedure. So that's why the meeting is Monday with all secondary personnel. Am I okay to move on?
Just one more comment, Rick. Seniors needing to take classes in the spring to be eligible for sports.
So that's another great question. And the hard response to that is yes. So I was a former athletic director, the Region 3 chairman for the Virginia High School League, and yes. So if a student is a senior and they decide to graduate early and they graduate in January, but say they play soccer, they would not be eligible to play soccer if they were not taking classes. And they would not be eligible to play soccer if they graduated early, because if you graduate early, when you graduate, you are done as a student at Monticello High School and Albemarle County Public Schools. And so the Virginia High School League sees that as the ending of your athletic career. But I do know this, that's a great question. And in that meeting, I said that Albemarle County, the high schools would be having a meeting with seniors about early graduation. The athletic directors will be a part of that meeting, and they will go through all those scenarios. And that meeting is going to be on August 18th. It'll be a Zoom meeting for the entire community.
Thank you.
All right, so we're down to a couple slides to have right now. If we go to the hybrid schedule, it's talking about how many classes will a student have and how many students would be in their classroom. In general, there would be 10 to 12 students in a classroom, depending on the size of the classroom. There are some rooms in our building that are bigger than others, where we could spread students out and maybe get 15 or 16 students in there. But it all depends on the size of the classroom. Our desk will be situated in a space where they are 6 feet apart in all directions. When do schedules get mailed out? That's a great question, because everybody wants to know ultimately who their teacher is going to be and when they get to see them. Teachers' schedules are going to be released on August 24th at approximately 4 o'clock. So Power School would be turned on at that time. Parents and students will be able to check into their schedule at that time and see who their teachers are and what classes they have each semester. What is being done to ensure consistency across classes so students and parents can better navigate the online resources? So last year was our first year using the program Schoology. Our teachers were trained a few opportunities in the fall. The expectation last year was that teachers got their syllabus into Schoology, but the expectation was not that all teachers used it. Our expectation moving forward this year, in year 2, is going to be that our teachers use Schoology and use it as a platform for students to get all their information. We do realize that it's hard for teachers to work sometimes in Google and then have to leave Google to go into Schoology. But our goal is for all of our families to be able to access Zoom as a parent or Schoology as a parent. Students likewise. So that's our goal as a school. How will instruction be delivered to a student who tests positive and needs to be isolated? So at that point, all students or even staff members that get infected with COVID-19, because we know it's going to happen. At some time, it would happen. And so when it does happen, people would be quarantining for a minimum of 14 days, right? And so when they are quarantined, their instruction would be synchronous learning with their teachers, and it would be asynchronous learning. So if we were in the hybrid model at the time that someone got infected, which would be probably one of the most likely type of scenarios in the hybrid model, then there would be synchronous and asynchronous learning that would take place during that time. So in the spring last year, so the question is managing the time on the computers if you have multiple kids and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. I will say that last spring, the Virginia Department of Education did not hold standards for attendance, okay? I will say the Virginia Department of Education has changed that. They are holding school systems and schools responsible for attendance this year. Okay, so what does attendance look like? Because attendance is going to be very different for different families. Family A that lives in the urban ring right up here at Charlottesville and, you know, has access to the internet, they can be on Zoom every day and would have no problem being recognized by their teacher and checking in with their teacher for virtual attendance. Student B, who lives in Scottsville and may have random access to the internet, and they are, some days they have good internet connection and some days they have poor internet connection, might be able to turn an assignment in. They could not log in to the Zoom meeting, but they were able to get in later and they saw what materials needed to be turned in. They did the work and turned it in. They would be counted present by the Department of Education because they completed the work that the teacher was requiring of them. We have other families, family C, that has no internet connection at all. Those families might request from school to come in and do the work, or they might request a zip drive that we mail home to them or they come and pick up, or they might require paper copies of work. They would turn that in at the end of the week. We would then check the work off and they would then be given attendance in Power School for being there. So the Virginia Department of Education has given us some leeway with instruction and with attendance. So managing homework and classwork, we are trying extremely hard to make sure that we are following the guidelines that the county has for homework. And that is also on the Albemarle County homepage, but we are not going to make it so students are going to be sitting in Zoom all day and then required to do an enormous amount of homework each night. Can my son attend Center One using the hybrid model? So students will be able to attend Center One if you are a Center One family. It will be one semester or the other. So you may have Center One first semester or you may have Center One second semester. You would not have both a Monticello and an Albemarle schedule during the same semester. So students making sure that they have everything they need for graduation. A student on the old schedule could get 8 credits each year. On the 4x4, students can still get 8 credits. Each student will have the opportunity to meet virtually or speak on the phone to their guidance counselor to make sure that their schedule is balanced, to make sure that they are moving in a direction for graduation from Monticello High School. So Mr. Michi, do we have any more questions?
No, sir.
Folks, I just want to say I appreciate the time that you have spent with us this afternoon. I hope that it is valuable information to you. I hope that it is helpful in helping you to plan out decisions, A, that are best for you and your family, because we see 1,200 most important people in the world every day. When we're in school, every family sends us the most important person in the world to us, and it's our responsibility to work with them. Well, we're not seeing them in person right now. We're going to have to see them virtually. but they're still the most important person in the world to you. And we treat every student like they're the most important person. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we are meeting all the needs of all of our students. So our counselors will reach out once schedules are set to work with students and make families to make sure they're balanced and students are on track for graduation. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to an administrator. I will say that on our, Miss Patricia Dimitri is our 9th grade administrator. Mr. Hank Atkins is our 10th grade administrator. Mr. Tim Driver is our junior administrator or 11th grader administrator. And Mr. Rick Verhoeven, myself, is your senior or 12th grade administrator. If you have a question, please don't hesitate to call the school, ask for us, or send us an email. We will do everything we can do to answer your question or make sure your question is put to the right person. I also wanted to make sure you knew that we are planning on back to school nights. We will have them. They will be virtual, but we will have back to school nights. All that information is going to be shared. You will be receiving several updates in Connect Eds over the next 5 to 8 school days. And we will be transitioning to a new website. That information is going to be shared out by Miss Melissa Hankins, who is our testing coordinator and our homepage coordinator. If we don't have any further questions, without further ado, I don't want to waste any of your time. I thank you so much. I miss you as Mustang families. I can't wait when we can all come together and be a big family again. I look forward to speaking with you at some time in the near future. I wish you the best, and I hope for healthy days ahead for you. Thank you and have a great evening. Ms. Dimitri, you need to put me back as host.
Yes, sir.
That way I can save the recording.
You got it right now.